So we're going to begin by reading this flash fiction prompt from Sarah Freely. And I need to emphasize that she actually she teaches classes and you can sign up for them. And she's incredible. I've taken one of her classes before and I think they're great. So I'm going to read this out loud. You don't have to read along if you don't want, but you can if you want. And I want you to be thinking of the way she's using repetition, of what she achieves by using very sparse description. And that's what you're going to have the opportunity to do in your 6 minutes as I throw words at you. So age 12, we dive. Age 12 and we dive and dive. For the girl playing dead by the drain in the deep end of the pool, for the pennies we toss in the water by the lifeguard's chair, from the diving board, 3 steps, the hurdle, the launch. We come up for air long enough to eat lunch, cheeseburgers and fries drowned in a murder of ketchup, our bellies humped and rounded, pushed against the elastic of our bathing suits as we dive and dive and dive. At 14, we lie in the gutters of the swimming pool, basting our bellies in baby oil and the occasional wavelets of cool that slap up whenever someone dives in. We pick at burgers without buns, drink cans of Tab poured warm over ice that cracks like knuckles. We learn about calories and fat from the high school girls who shout warnings across the humid locker room. Sometimes we die, but only at the end of the day. At 18, we arrange chaise lounges and serve up the buffet of ourselves. Tasty swell of breasts basted to brown, a feast for the boys teeing off on the first hole. Later, we pull out hand mirrors and paint alien faces over our own eyes and lips, wait by the 18th green while they putt out. We prop our feet on the dashboard of their cars, let them drive us to a rutted field off a dirt road where we unzip and dive as if we are starving. We hold our breath, but we've already smothered, already drowned. All right, and if I could figure out how to unshare. So there we go. So what a powerful piece, right? And the things she's doing, I mean, just the rutted field, right? And the subtle reference to rutting like animals do. I mean, she's just using such powerful verbs. Does anything stand out to the rest of you in this? I took away the things.
The theme of death.
Yeah, right? Playing dead by the drain and how that moves on in the piece.
Murder of ketchup.
Yeah, that's what I'm gonna say. Yeah,
I like that one.
Yeah. Let me see if this pops up in the chat for you now. Hold on. I'm going to try to put the piece in the chat because it has a link. So hold on. What else did you notice in the piece?
The evolution of the girls changing and then self-sacrifice and they went from being concerned about what they were doing and having fun, and that was the centerpiece of their attention, to becoming something for someone else, and how it just continued to evolve until they were drowning and suffocating. So yeah, the theme of water and death and drowning and the cycle, basically.
Incredible. So would you say that piece takes a position on something?
I mean, the obvious to me is women's that women in society, women's role, how they're socially seen and accepted and modified.
Sure, because for her, what's the clue that this is pretty far in the past? What detail did she give us that makes you almost laugh out loud?
Tab for me was the first one. I was like, okay, yep, Tab.
Are any of you other people old enough to know what Tab is?
That's soda?
Yeah. My mom used to drink the heck out of that.
Oh.
Yeah.
Or in the South, we call that a different flavor of Coke.
Right.
That's true.
Yeah, and so her 12-year-olds are probably different than 12-year-olds today, right? I mean, so starting at 12 was viable then. And yeah, she's talking about the way that women actually put themselves into their own cages. You know, the high school girls warn them. So they're learning by watching these other people and modifying their behavior based on how they're behaving. And I suspect that Freely is telling us that maybe we should try to break that vicious cycle, right? But she does that without saying it for sure. So it's a beautiful piece, and I wanted to share it with you because I feel like when we hear words like that, it just sparks our own synapses to do better when we do our 6-minute timed writings. So so we're going to do a 6-minute timed writing, and I just need to pull up one more Word document so I can get this right. Okay, so we're going to do an improv writing prompt. And the beginning, I'm going to put this in the chat. The other thing was too long, it wouldn't take it in the chat. But I will send all of you who are here the document I'm working from, and you'll have the link to Sarah's flash fiction. And you should read more of her. She's appearing twice this year in the Best Microfictions essay collection in the anthology. She's just brilliant. And she used to teach at SNHU. Forgot to tell you that. So for this improv writing prompt, I'm putting it in the chat now. You're going to begin with, "It was fun being." Now you can do this autobiographically if you want, but if you're working in a class right now or you're working on your own fiction, it's probably best to do with a character. It doesn't have to be in the first person. You could, it was fun being a knight, he thought, which is, I can't do this off the top of my head. Anyway, and I'm going to come in about every 15 to 20 seconds with a word chosen randomly from a book. The book this time is The Best of Brevity. And if you're at all interested in microfiction, it's just something I'm really working on right now as I'm starting to query out my memoir. And so my longer work is out and I'm working on micro because I think it finely tunes your skills in a really similar way to poetry. But the difference, and the important difference, is that microfiction and flash fiction, which are kind of the same thing, one smaller, they will require a narrative arc. And that's why it helps those of us who write prose to do better, because your flash fiction really needs to encapsulate some kind of story, even if it's very implied. Whereas poetry, it's fine not to create sort of coherent meaning. You can create more like philosophical or beautiful meaning. Some poems, especially, the poetry I like Mary Oliver and people like that, does have really linear meaning. But the difference with flash and micro is that you do have to create a narrative arc. And so I'm going to be pulling from The Best of Brevity. I recommend it if you like flash fiction. It's full of some really great work. And so we're going to do this. So get your minds wrapped around "It was fun being." And again, Manny, I don't think you've been here, but I do recommend, if you can, write by hand, because it does, using your hand for some reason, scientifically crosses your brain hemispheres and actually engages more creativity. It's fine. I do most of my writing on the keyboard just because it's efficient. But for these short ones, if you can, I just recommend writing by hand. So, and then when we get done, we're going to find out what you said. So everybody who's willing will be reading what you have. And you're welcome to turn off your camera if you want. Definitely mute yourself. And we will head into this improv writing prompt. So begin with "It was fun being," or whatever you want to begin with. Just start writing on your marks, get set, write. I'm an idiot. I haven't been thrown in words. I've lost my mind. Cramp.
Could you repeat the word?
Cramp, like a muscle cramp. And we're going to go extra time because I lost my mind. And I dropped the book. Cedar.
What was it?
Cedar, like a cedar tree. Foam, like the foam from shaving cream. Multiplication, like multiplication tables. Breathe,
Can you repeat that one?
breathe, like breathing, breathe. Apology, like apologizing to someone. Hot belly,
What was the one before Potbelly?
breathe, like breathing, like lungs.
Okay, what was before that?
I don't know. I'm just flipping through the book. Use
Something about-
shoreline. And your last one will be cosmos, and I will give you one more minute to keep finishing things out. The last word is cosmos. Okay, your time is up. I'm so sorry. This is exactly what I was talking about. I'm losing my mind. Improv writing prompt, and there's no prompts. I don't know why you guys didn't jump in and say, hey, where are you?
Like she's being really easy on us this time.
No, that was a terrible beginning prompt. So yeah, I mean, it's a great beginning prompt if I throw words at you. So I'm going to pop a little homework into the chat for you so that, because we're going to do another and totally separate improv writing prompt because you sort of missed the fun that came with that. So normally the next step I would do for the next 6 minutes when we do this 6 minutes would be the homework, but instead we're going to do another improv writing prompt because, and then for each of them, you should do this homework, which I put in the chat. And so when we're away from here, give yourself a 6-minute timer and take your favorite sentence from what you wrote now and write off of it for 6 minutes. Because what happens when we do these improv prompts is your brain just takes off in all these directions. And so you're able to take one of the directions you headed in and then move it into another short story or short narrative, or just see these bursts of writing that we're doing now are just ways to show you where your brain could be taking you if you sort of unhinge that internal editor and you're forced to write quickly. It helps to spark a lot of creativity, which is why we do this. Okay, so most people are back on screen. We have enough to at least begin hearing what you worked with. And you know, if you don't want to read, that's fine. I need to emphasize that you're always welcome to hear everybody else. I'd love it if you're able to comment on people. And if your sound isn't working or whatever, you can always comment in the chat. But what we're going to do is hear from everybody. And then I really want you to start talking about what stands out to you. And I really want to try to stay in the background at the beginning of it, at least, because I feel like I'm so excited I take over and I really want to hear what you think. So is anybody interested in going ahead with reading what you got? Sarah, okay, great.
It was fun being anticipated that Christmas morning. I lay carefully placed in a box under the pine-scented tree. A few minutes pass and I hear a faint squeal as my girl comes hurtling towards me. I flip over side to side with the hazardous decorum of a 2-year-old opening the first present she sees, me. A burst of light and my wrapping is tossed aside barely noticed as Cassie's plump hands grasp me by my cool plastic arm and yank me suddenly out of the box. Glee shines from her eyes as she touches my silky hair. A slight shake of my body and I blink my long lashes at her. Her giggles cause an obvious cramp in her side as she lays me down on the cedar chest adjacent to the tree. She laughs so hard that the spittle foam chokes her a bit as she breathes. She's too young for multiplication, but she'll see that I will be with her for decades. The lettering embroidered above my potbelly saying "Love, Mom" will show the attempted apology from her absent mother. When her tears create a shoreline between herself and happiness, she'll hold me tight as she wished she could cross the cosmos and escape from the hell that is her young life.
I know the story, so I'm like, oh my gosh. Okay, what stood out to the rest of you?
The point of view was the first thing that I was like, okay, this is cool. This is I like this point of view. It's unusual. So coming from the doll's point of view instead of the child's point of view. And plump hands just jumped out at me. And the use of the words, multiplication. I love how that it got moved in there. It was flawless. Like that was really good. And shoreline.
I didn't even notice it.
Really? Yeah.
It was, that's a good thing though, is that it didn't sound out of place, so it didn't catch my attention.
Yeah, yeah. That was good. And then the feeling around shoreline, that was man, yeah.
Was shoreline one of the words?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I must have missed it.
That's okay. I missed one too, I think. I don't.
You'll probably hear it in somebody else's.
Mhm.
Anyone else?
My
Jonathan?
favorite part about it was the turn, because at first I thought, of course, this is from a kid's point of view, and then when it's the doll, but the way you did it, I was caught off guard, but not caught off guard, if that makes any sense.
Like the right kind of caught off guard, right?
Yes.
Yeah. Anyone else?
All right.
For reading or commenting on
Re-
Sarah's?
Reading.
Okay, any more ideas on Sarah's before we go to Garrett? Sarah, I just want to add, so knowing what I know about Cassie and knowing the story, imagining from her doll's point of view is really interesting because she's so important to her life. So I love that you are at least playing in that direction. And would that show up in your writing? Maybe or maybe not, but it's important as an author to be taking on all those perspectives. So it's nicely done.
Thank you.
Great. Okay, so Garrett, what'd you get?
Okay, so real quick before I read, anyone who does eventually read anything I put out there, which I know none of you really know me, I'm a science fiction, fantasy, and horror writer. Okay. I almost never write nonfiction. For some reason, I was called to do this from a life experience on this one. Probably because for the PhD program I'm trying to get into, they do have a foreign language requirement, and I'm going to focus on French because I write under a French last name. So I had an experience in France, and that's what this is. Okay, it was fun being an American Busso. It wasn't as insulting as the American English equivalent of being called a redneck. I climbed trees in the woods outside of Paris and looked at the wonder of the nearby vineyards. I played bocce ball with the old men in the village. Boyan Tapaloff de Finilet de la Manat, my pen pal and exchange mate, thought I was odd for wanting to do these things. He was a city boy with several girlfriends. They all knew each other well and never questioned his affections or intentions. So when I fell for his cousin in the small village of Galargue in the south of France, near the city of Nîmes on the Mediterranean coast, I thought I should be the best version of myself I was in France. One night, the locals were competing in a game simply called Toro. It was like bullfighting, except without the swords to kill the bull, or the cape, or the funny outfits. The rules were simple. In the center of the cramped local bullfighting ring was a 2-inch deep pool of water. You had to get the bull to go through the water without going through it yourself. I decided I would show Boyan's cousin my courage and interest in her. I would be strong like the cedar tree. I would flow and weave from the beast like the foam on the waves of the ocean. I would multiply my appeal to her through victory. I breathed calm into my body as the bull, horns and all, charged me through the water. I dove over the nearby walls of the rings to the alleys between the ring and the stands used to herd the large beast back to its cage. A pot-bellied Busso slapped my back in praise and pointed me to the judge's stand to gain my prize, a t-shirt. Several others had already earned theirs, some of them at the cost of broken bones. I presented the shirt to her like a knight returning a lady's favor, and that was when I learned the word Busso. She and her cousin giggled at my efforts and rejected me. Then I stood there in the night of contest and stared upward at the cosmos with my t-shirt in my hand.
Oh. I confess I was hoping you were going to tell me that's who your wife is now, but
Oh no. That's a much more interesting story. Less life-threatening, but way more interesting.
All right, what stood out for you all with Garrett's work?
For one, you read it very well.
Thank you.
Like, it's fun to just hear you read it. And I mean, it didn't seem like there were any prompts. It was just a great story to hear, and I feel like we could be sitting around a campfire or something.
Yeah, the fiction creeped in with the words like pot belly and things like that. That's where the fiction creeped in. But no, most of my writing, my novel that I put out last December was first person. So when first person's my natural reading tone. So if I'm reading you like a third person point of view, I'm going to stumble a lot more.
I'm going to pop in really quick just to say twice now already we've said that the words have seemed seamless. And then when Garrett said that's where the fiction came in, I want you to encourage all of you. I hope you noticed that his language suddenly became figurative. He started using rhetorical devices as soon as my words started throwing in. And that's because you're like, how am I going to use this, right? And so just keep in mind that idea that, figurative language is important. The comparisons are important. And he called it fiction, but it's also just a creative way of appropriating the world around you, especially in nonfiction. So just think about the complexities of what happened in this group. Oh, we see you, Jess. You may not see us, but we see you. Yeah, so
Okay.
really great. Any more thoughts for, well, now we don't see it, but anyway, any more thoughts for Garrett?
It jumped out at me was the humor. I mean, just right out of the gate, there was this underlying humor that I loved it. It was good. It kept me really entertained. I was like, oh, what, this is really interesting. I can see the entire scene. I visualized it. And the potbelly, it jumped out at me. It was it was well done.
Thank you.
Yeah, I agree. Any more thoughts? Jonathan, you have anything for him?
Well, coming from a Haitian family, I do really love the way that you wove the French into your narrative, because that kind of reminds me at home, because like my parents and my sister, they speak English and then they'll switch to Creole or French without even noticing. So it kind of,
Oh yeah. So my grandfather is Cajun, and so I was raised around this really weird, pardon the term, bastardized French off of Canadian French off of French. So I'm used to hearing the language switch when I was a little kid myself.
Well, so for both Garrett and Jonathan, if you were ever to do a PhD program, Jonathan, that's one of the arguments you can work for is like, why do I have to learn, Parisian French? Can I take my language requirement and move it into one of the Creole versions of it, right?
Actually, that's something I've seen in all the research I've been doing for the PhD programs I'm considering, is if you have a native second language, or even primary language, with English being the second language, all you have to do is show demonstrate fluency in both for writing.
Right.
Some colleges require two languages, some only require one.
Right. And I was
one
lucky because it was fluency in writing and reading French. Luckily, they never heard me speak it. It would have been awful.
No one cares if you can talk it. Everyone cares if you can translate it when you're reading.
Right. Okay, so does anybody else want to read what you got?
If you guys have time, I don't want to.
No, everybody's welcome. That's what these are about.
Okay. It was fun being 17. I was free to be me. A candy apple red Ford Contour, the windows down, a cigarette glowing in my left hand, my right steering us through the night toward an ocean of possibilities. A 7-mile bridge to eternity. The past disappeared in the rearview mirror, the future visible 50 feet ahead. My foot cramped and I shifted in my seat. Memories of the cedar shingles from home flashed in my mind, but I focused on the future. The ocean waves rolling frothy foam to the shore. Goosebumps multiplied up and down my arms. I could breathe there. My apology still hung in the air, standing next to the potbelly stove. I had known the shoreline called me, a place where the sky swooped down to touch my forehead, the cosmos in my eyes.
Great. Okay, what stood out to all of you?
It's like poetry, but not.
I saw the visual of the classic car and the being 17 with the cigarette. I didn't smoke, but my story was when I was 16, so I connected to it real quick. So
I picked up on this theme of distance, because I kept hearing imagery of you either going towards something that was far away or looking at something that was far away. So that's just something that jumped out to me.
I like that started with it was fun being 17, because funnily I started mine the same way with the same exact sentence.
Oh, wow.
I hope you'll want to go next, Melissa, after we finish with.
Yeah, mine is a little longer, and I feel it goes in this opposite direction that that her piece went.
Okay. Well, just one quick thing I want to say with her, and then I'd love to hear yours. So I was particularly enamored with and wondered how you so quickly came up with all the metaphorical meaning that. So I'm going to start doing this way every time, because all the stuff you all wrote in the beginnings really then allowed you to start popping when we hit the what do I call this? Improv words. And so I think I'm going to do a delay every time because you had this great metaphor going about leaving the past behind on a 7-mile bridge. So the stretch into the future, but you could only see 50 feet ahead. I mean, and that's a controlling metaphor that'll hold us all the way through whatever you end up writing. And as Susan said, it's like narrative poetry. And Sarah said, it's a lot like poetry. It had all the qualities of a flash fiction. You just didn't quite have the time to tie it in a bow, which is, you know, what we do when we go back and edit what we do in these sessions. But there's a narrative arc happening there. And she's leaving the past behind, which you got to have happen because I forgot to bring in the improv words. And as soon as I brought in the improv words, the past kept popping in her mind. And that's not surprising because anybody who says they're leaving the past behind is highly focused on the past, right? It was great. I hope you'll keep working on it.
Thank you.
Okay, so Melissa, are you up for reading?
Yeah, I can read mine. It was fun being 17. Depression sucks. I didn't do well on my ACTs despite being a good academic student. I knew that what I wanted to study in college, but unfortunately, creative writing is impractical, and I would only become a teacher by studying it. Yep, 17 was so much fun. Dead dreams, dead grades, dead mind. It was fun being 18. I retook the ACTs, got the same score. My grades last year fell because, again, depression sucks. Creative writing is out of the question. I don't even have the motivation to write anything anymore. I only write for class now, but I have to get my head out of the clouds and focus on practical fields. Everyone around me is a science and math person. I'm the only creative. No one appreciates my writing. My friends think it's dumb and couldn't be bothered to finish reading my story. My dad mocks me if I even think about majoring in creative writing. Even my mom doesn't think I should major in that. STEM fields give me mind cramps, but if that's the sacrifice I have to make to please my parents, I'll do it. It was fun being 19. The cedar trees surrounding my college campus are so pretty. The clouds above are so fluffy, they look like foam. I can breathe here. This place gives me clarity. Multiplication, division, science, maybe it won't be so bad. I feel bad for questioning myself and my parents. They know better. Maybe I owe them an apology, but I don't say anything. I'll start with some biology and chemistry classes. Biology seems like a good choice for me, and I think I can make it. I'll take one English class. It'll be my potbelly, but my main focus is biology. 19 sucks. I don't know who I am. I'm failing my classes even though I've always been a top student. I did poorly on my midterms. What's going on? I'm smart. I know I'm smart, but I just don't seem to get it. I'm doing okay in biology, but I don't understand chemistry. The only class I like is English. What a cosmo universe. I can't like English more than biology and chemistry. I have to focus. STEM, Melissa, STEM. Stop being stupid. English and creative writing won't get you anywhere.
I don't know who first sang it, strumming my pain with her fingers, right? I mean, oh my goodness. Does anybody here have a different experience than that? And I'm not saying it's average, it's beautifully rendered. All I'm saying is, yes, I hear you.
That felt very real. I could relate to that more than I want to say I would.
It's like when I got out of high school and I was first starting college back in the early 90s. I had told kids I was in, or adults at that point, but technically kids because we were all 18, telling them I'm going to be a novelist. This is 93. And they're all like, man, you're not going to go anywhere. You're not going to do anything. And life got in the way. I didn't get back to creative writing until just a few years ago when I started this program. Now I'm hopefully going on to a doctorate program and I've got a novel out and stuff, but it all happened in my late 40s, you know? So, yeah, I can relate. And also I love the dichotomy of our, when it was fun being 17 starts, you know, one's optimistic about change, going on to the future and escaping our past. And this next one's, man, this sucks. You know, so two different directions.
Susan added that she had similar experiences, but rebelled after changing her major 7 times. What stood out?
Oh, that's
So, like, Jess, Sarah, anything to add?
I was gonna say that I really like the progression, like the progression in age, but like emotion and decision making and doubt, and is just very upfront. I thought that was cool.
I think also what's relatable to me the most is a lot of us in the writing world have come from things that were not supportive of writing. They that is something that was dad was always like, oh, you're going to be a starving artist. That was his thing. So I also abandoned writing many times over the years and pursued business degrees and many other arms of work that I despise. So that was very yeah, that pressure from the family and that feeling like, you know, do I make myself happy? Do I make them happy? What's the best way to go?
Mm-hmm. I haven't asked, but Manny, do you have anything to add? I haven't been very inclusive.
No, not at all at the moment. I'm enjoying everything that I'm hearing though. Like this is really cool for my first workshop, and you know,
Yeah.
Listening into everybody, you know, do their thing, and I don't know, I'm enjoying it. Of course, I'm not putting anything yet, but if you do another workshop, I'm definitely joining in because it seems like fun. But I'm just like, oh, okay, you know, first time person sitting in the back row, not lifting my hand, you know.
That's totally fine. I just didn't want you to be left out because this is.
Oh no, I'm enjoying it.
Your first time in, you're kind of learning how it works and
yeah, absolutely.
Yeah,
absolutely.
And Melissa, I think every one of us has at least some version of that story, and that's why I think it's really meaningful, and the way you relate it is unique. And I love that you borrowed a little bit from Sarah freely to use her years, but it's just a framework. It's nothing like hers, right? And then you give us like an emotional hiccup. We're like, maybe she'll be okay in biology, and she's sort of maybe in biology, but I agree, chemistry makes no sense. But you know, we're on this roller coaster with either your character or probably you, right? Or like a fictionalized version of yourself. I will say I have a small portion of a chapter in my memoir that talks about how I ended up being an English major. And at least I had the luck of attending the Air Force Academy, so I had a guaranteed job on the other side. You know, I mean, because that's the only way I could have done English, and also, you know, had a complete like living wage life that was centered around English and words, for me anyway. And Susan, I know you're working in the chat, so in like for you and for Manny, I just want to check in. Do either of you want to read? You don't have to. I'm just, you know, I feel like I'm leaving you out. And while you're deciding that, you can always pop it in the chat. Jonathan, do you want to read?
Sure. This is just to give some context. This is basically one long internal monologue from a character from another story I'm writing, and I challenged myself by making every character in that story completely unlikable. So if this sounds like narcissistic diatribe, that's why. It was fun being a winner in his mind. Since his father's time and his grandfather's time, the most they could say about themselves was at least they weren't as big a failure as the man who came before them. They told themselves, at least I paid this bill on time, or at least I could afford gas in my truck for the week. He remembered them almost puffing up their chests with pride every time they said something like that, but he thought it was a bold-faced lie. How could you be happy living from one paycheck to the next? How could you be happy just renting a space for your family to live as you worked like a dog? How could you be happy only having just enough? You couldn't. The very thought of it put a cramp in his stomach, like drinking fermented sap from a cedar tree. Pride like that was just as good as the foam from the shampoo in his shower. It was gone once you held it. You take your wealth and you multiplied it. That was the game. That was how you lived. Without it, you might as well just stop breathing. He wouldn't live like that. He would do whatever it took without apology. He would grow rich and fat until he developed a pot belly full of money. He would have so much money that he would own the Miami shoreline. If there was a God, a higher power, or a cosmos, he would make it happen.
Thoughts, everybody? Gary has to slip out pretty quick. Do you have anything you want to say right up front?
I liked where you were going with the fact that he wasn't being optimistic in a like necessarily positive way so much as he was being optimistic in an anti being like the man before him way, you know. Unfortunately, as someone with father issues and trying to be a better father to my children than my father was to me, I relate heavily to that. But I was also, as I mentioned in the earlier, how I went from wanting to write a novel to life and then coming back to this later in my life. I chased that dream of chasing the money, and it succeeded in I have a house above my head, but at the same time I was miserable, absolutely miserable. So I relate to that, chasing that dream because it's what's expected, and how it doesn't make you happy. And that's what I got out of the tone of that when I was hearing it.
Thanks, Garrett.
Yeah. I wanted to say, first of all, that it's relatable. Second, the use of fermented sap, that was beautiful. I love that. Just the visual and that feeling of like, ooh, that I think it got across the feeling really well that you were trying to get across. When you said you took your wealth and multiplied it, that was great. How you tied that in with comparing, to his father in the past, his grandfather. And then your use of how you said owned the Miami shoreline, describing how much money, you had. So that's a level of rich that is really hard to comprehend. So I thought that using owning the Miami shoreline was really great.
It sort of seemed like you knew the prompt words before she gave them. So cheater, cheater, pumpkin eater. It felt like a piece that would be put in the New Yorker or something, like classy and educated, and I don't know how to describe it exactly, but yeah.
Can I hop in and interpret? Because I think what you're saying is his figurative language was really sophisticated, and that's what made it classic. Yeah. That's what I'm hearing you say, Sarah.
Thank you.
Do you have anything to add, Melissa?
Nothing personally, other than I really did enjoy reading that. That's just like all the other pieces I've heard so far. I just enjoyed hearing all of them.
Yeah, I agree with that, definitely. And if Susan or Manny, you can hop in if you want. You don't need to, and you can go in the chat. Susan's got road work going on behind her, which is why she's chatting instead of showing up and isn't going to read. Wow. Just keep doing that. And did each of you notice there's something, and it's such a strange and I think magical part of doing this kind of prompt. There's just all of a sudden, all of the figurative language starts popping in unexpected directions, but your brain is controlling it to your story, so it still works. I mean, Jess gave us the cedar planks from home. You gave us that Miami shoreline, which is the one that probably stood out to me the most, though. I really love the way that foam dissipated between your fingers with the shampoo. That worked fabulously. And Sarah, you were the first to go, so now I'm losing it because I also forgot to do the prompt right. But do you hear the way, all of you, that this figurative language is appearing in really interesting ways, and ways that it wouldn't have if you were controlling it on your own? And so the other thing I can tell you, and I've done this for myself before, is you can go into a book and pull these words and then record yourself doing them, and like make 3 or 4 recordings of yourself throwing out words to you. Get rid of them for a while, and you won't remember what's coming a day or 2 later, and do this to yourself again. And it really makes your writing become something different than where it was trying to go. I'm so impressed. You're just inspirational. All of you are. So it's 10:02, and I usually try to go to 10:30. We probably have just enough time to do one more of these. Do you want to do one more? Okay, and if anybody has to go, feel free, like, there's no, you know, stain on you if you have to leave because, you know, it goes to 10:30. But what I think we'll do is we'll do another improv writing prompt, but we're going to use a different beginning. In the beginning, I'm going to put it right in here. We're still going to use a door, and it's going to be, you can do it in the first person, third person, second person if you want to try. I actually had a person write in second person this term, and it's working. I'm so impressed. Is it, Melissa, is it you? Somebody with an M in their name. This is how I remember who people are. It's horrible. Okay, Melissa, no problem. But anyway, somebody's writing in the second person, and I normally don't recommend it, and it's going great. So, okay. Are y'all ready to write? When he, she, I, you opens the door, and your marks get set, right. I'll start jumping in 30 seconds. Your first word is hunched. Sparkle. Sparkle like a diamond. Reflection. Reflection.
When you open the door for everything's swooping and diving in my face. I hunched over, arms shielding my head.
Apartment.
What was it?
Apartment. Giant.
What was that word again?
Giant, like very big. Giant.
Oh, giant. Okay.
Raced, like race a horse. Raced. Diagram. Exasperated. Ancient, like very old, ancient. Blood. Your final word is infinite, and you have a minute left. Infinite. Okay, time is up. Try to wrap things up.
You said blood like as I was about to type it. That was weird. Creepy.
I'm glad. I mean, it shows a connection. It's really funny. I often went to this morning meditation poetry thing, and one morning we were writing off of the prompt she gives, and we would write for more like 10 minutes. And I put Reykjavik in my poem. I don't remember why. And when I read my poem, the person who runs the workshop was like, "Oh, but I put Reykjavik in my poem," and you know. So
That's
something,
different.
yeah, something happened. It's like, and I mean, I have to tell you, it happened repeatedly. This was a daily thing I was doing that I need to go back to. And something happens, people connect, and their stories will be similar, or like Jess and Melissa had the same verse sentence. I mean, and granted, the prompt was part of that sentence, but there's just something that, I mean, I'm amazed because we're in all different parts of the country, but it really happens.
Like the moon.
Yeah. All right, so we have 3 normal readers here, and Susan's got noise, and Manny's doing the back row for now, which is totally fine. And we started with Sarah last time, so between Jonathan and Jess, would either of you like to read?
Read.
Okay, thanks, Jonathan.
When I opened the door, I envisioned the gun being held to my head as I gave up my wallet. Ever since then, I've stayed in my apartment, a hunched, a sobbing mess. My computer screen sparkled as it was the beginning and end of my world, and yet I couldn't escape my reflection. If my apartment burned down, I doubt I would ever leave it. I'm a giant coward. Every time I heard a noise outside my door, I would race away from it. I have a diagram illustrating the rising crime rate around the city to justify my choice, but my family has become exasperated with me. People get robbed, shot, killed all the time, they said. That was a truth as old as time, as ancient as time. That was easy for them to say, but I could still taste the blood in my mouth from the pistol whipping. I don't have to leave. In my computer, the world is infinite, and that's all I need.
Oh. Your thoughts, everyone?
Right out of the gate, it's super intense. You get that sensation of fear, just that gun, like it just hits you right there, and then it sets the scene for the rest of it. I think that was great.
Thank you.
Anything
No.
to add, Sarah? Oh,
Well, without having read my, I'll say we both went kind of dark. I think that was kind of interesting, especially since we were just talking about how people kind of link somehow sometimes when you're doing this kind of thing. But I thought that like the whole experience was like a climax, and you could definitely build before and after. I think that's cool.
definitely. I wanted to say, I forgot to say for your previous one, your repetition of how could anybody be happy in the previous one was showing how unhappy your character was and that money didn't make happiness. And I meant to say that last time. And I felt like we then moved on to another character who is also profoundly unhappy, but justifiably so. And that's different than the character you were writing the first time, because this character just keeps offering reasons why he's too afraid to go outside. And he calls himself a coward. And I'm just assuming that it's a male protagonist, but he calls himself a coward. And yet he's been pistol whipped. I mean, like, it seems like his behavior is justified. And I can't help but tell you that, I mean, immediately I got a Gotham City, you know, I don't know why, but that's the type of setting that I got for you. Was that what you were going for? I mean, not specifically Gotham City, but something like that.
Actually, in my own head canon, the city he was in is very safe, and what happened to him is super rare. That's why he's so freaked out.
Yeah, okay. That's and that would be really easy if you had had the chance to sort of finish the whole thing out and weren't being handed words every 20 seconds. You definitely could bring that out even more. It's great. Yeah. Well, I enjoyed that a lot. Thank you, Jonathan. I think you really have, as Jess said, a skill for sort of setting a scene quickly and then using pretty profound rhetorical language. It's nice.
Thank you.
Who wants to go next?
I'll go.
Okay.
When she opens the door, the heat blasts her as she steps out into the Texas weather. The sweltering temperature almost makes her forget what she's doing today. She punches herself in the thigh as she walks, trying to pull herself back to reality. Her mother was dead. She was never going to see the sparkle of pride in her mom's eyes again. Knowing that she'd never hear her rare laughter made her reflect on how we don't take the little things seriously, how she'd taken advantage of her mom dropping into her apartment unannounced, unwanted. Now all she could think of was how much she'd love to see. Wait a minute. Well, okay. How much she would love to see the giant scars on her mother's forearms left there after the paramedics repeatedly raced to save her life after a suicide attempt. The scars were numerous enough that they looked like a diagram of traumas. Beyond exasperated, Cassie knew that she couldn't have saved her mom if she had tried. Even if she'd lived to be ancient, she knew she'd never forget the image of her mom laying in a pool of her own blood. When would she unsee the gray pallor of death in her mom's face? Infinite other options had been available. Why hadn't her mom reached out? I would have been there for you.
Oh, wow. Yeah. Blood was perfect at the moment we both said it. Thanks for handing me that one. Great. Jonathan, Jess, anything to say?
Yeah, the sparkle just, that was flawless. I was like, you would have never guessed that someone handed you that word. That was really well done. Overall, the intensity of everything that happened there, the heat is too much, the loss is too much, everything is just overwhelming and pressing. And yeah, I think you showed that really well.
Thank you.
I was gonna say the intensity got me too, especially opening with the Texas heat. I live in Florida, and the heat here has always been no joke, so that automatically got my attention. Also, I like the especially the part about the diagram of, I don't remember the exact word, but the image in my head was just like this arm that had been cut to pieces from a failed suicide attempt. That image really stuck with me.
Thank you.
Yeah, what everybody said. Susan said powerful imagery, so intense. And this is a great example of you using the setting as a metaphor for the hell that Cassie is going through at this point. And knowing a little bit about your story, it was such an important scene because who knew that Cassie's mother showed back up in her life? And one of the things that I think you can keep exploring with this, if you keep writing in this area, is Cassie believes there's an infinite number of other possibilities that her mother could have chosen, really emphasizing how Cassie is different from her mother. And, there's these questions of nature versus nurture that emerge in something like this. Like, why was Cassie taken away and put in the foster care system? How does she and her mother reconnect? And why is Cassie so different than her mother then? Just some things to keep exploring. It's really intense. Just, whew. But yeah, this project that you're working on is definitely worth keeping going with.
Thank you.
Okay, that takes us to Jess. We have a room full of really intense people, by the way.
So I got a little distracted with the dog in here. I missed a couple of the words, so bear with
No
me.
worries.
When I opened the door, a flutter of wings flapped, swooping and diving near my face. I hunched over, arms shielding my head from the beaks and claws that tore at my skin and hair. The sparkle of diamonds on my watch seemed to get their attention, and they dove on it. When I reached the garage, I hardly recognized my reflection, disheveled. The wood doors of the apartment garages were giant, old, creaky monsters that screeched when I opened them. Blood dropped between my fingers and spotted the floor. I looked back through the glass, an infinite black mass of crows.
Whew. You don't usually write horror, do you?
Mostly thriller, but yeah.
Okay, thoughts, everybody?
That was
That's-
unexpected. Like, it almost sounded at the beginning like it was going to be a happy, and then immediately it was like death. It, for word choice, have you heard of a Murder of Crows?
Yes, yeah.
That's what I would have thought there, but I definitely love what you did. And as a person that loves birds, it kind of made me sad, but it also made me think of Alfred Hitchcock.
Yeah.
But it's awesome. Thank you.
I was gonna say, this got me because as someone who was actually attacked by a bird when I was young, I have a great hatred for birds. I can't help it.
Aw.
But I do know that they will attack you sometimes out of nowhere if you have something very shiny, and they also take shiny things. So I thought that was a great detail.
Thank you.
Yeah, and because I have a little history with your writing, the first question I had is this real? Is she really being attacked by birds, or is this something going on in her head? And even when you brought her to her reflection where she looked disheveled, I was like, is she disheveled because this really happened? And then it did happen, so darn it. But I loved the possibilities that I didn't know if I could trust the narrator, because I know that some of your narrators are untrustworthy. So that was fun. Definitely.
Yeah.
The idea of the murder of crows is also great. And considering that you had that small distraction happen, you really managed to create quite a bit of narrative arc with missing the middle of all the prompts. So nicely done.
Thank you.
Yeah. So what do you think is one of like the bigger things you took away from today? What was useful for you, or what did you discover in the writing work we did today?
I think what I learned is, well, I reinforced that your brain can go in some really weird and unexpected directions with just a little bit of nudging.
Mhm.
So if you're like stuck on a sentence or a paragraph, just get a dictionary, pick a word out of nowhere and see where that goes.
Ah, excellent.
And I like not having a choice about the prompts, because like I could read a book of prompts and I'm like, no, not that one. No, not that one. No, not that one. And this is like, you have to just dive in and I am surprised at where it takes me, like Jonathan said.
Yeah, I think the pressure for me that like, oh, you've got to write it. You've got 6 minutes. Go, go, go. Like my heart goes up and I'm like, oh my God, what am I going to do? And then somehow it happens. I just like shift into this frame of mind where I just do it. And then when it's done, I'm like, if I can do this in 6 minutes, why is it taking me, so long to work on this one scene for the novel? So yeah, I like this. I might actually use this in a scene that I'm working.
Fantastic. And I really do want to encourage you. I know it's silly and artificial, but I put this compression, like timed writing prompt on myself all the time. And weirdly enough, playing games with my head works. And so I do recommend that you try it for yourself. I love Jonathan's idea of just opening up a dictionary. One of the useful things about using, say, a fiction book or something is there's a lot of powerful verbs in there, so that can get you going nicely, or really interesting descriptors, because if there's an adjective in there, it's big and it matters, right? But yeah, this is just such a great way to get yourself writing. And actually, I do descriptions. So for example, when I describe this video, when I put it up on my YouTube channel, I'll say that we did improv writing. So you can look through my other videos and always pull an improv writing from the past and just fast forward to when we write, and you can get some more words out of that one too. So, you always have the chance to use this again if you're super, super stuck. But mostly when we do this kind of pressure writing, it's one, to show you how great it is to put yourself under that kind of, pressure, like I said. But the other thing that goes along with this, and I don't know why I just thought of this, but Marty Smith, who is our community of writers person in Colorado, I used to work with, but he writes thrillers and nonfiction books. He used to run the LA magazine, but he always says, if things are not going that great in your writing, the actual work, compress things, shorten the time that they're together, or put them in a tighter setting. Do something that creates that kind of potboiler pressure. Same thing with trying to write, then give yourself shorter time to work in, or give yourself specific words you have to use. And all those constraints will help make a story more exciting, or help make your brain work better under the writing job. That's what we did today. Do you have anything for me before we finish up?
What's your YouTube channel?
Oh, you know what? I'll put in the email I'm going to send to all of y'all. I'm sending it to your SNHU emails, so if you'll look there, I think it's SNHU Fraser videos, but I'll put a link to it in there. Okay. And so I have 2 playlists, one that's, or maybe 3, like word advice, braid space advice, and then one of them's all of these generative writing workshops I've been doing, or most of them when I remember to record. Well, thank you so much for inspiring me today, and for giving me an hour and a half of your time, and for taking the time to be creative and inventive. This is why I keep doing it. It's not like they pay me to do it, but I really enjoy seeing what you get, and it helps me as a writer to be inspired by you. So thank you.
It's great fun. Thank you.
I'm glad you can make it.
Yeah, this was awesome to listen to everybody do their thing. I will definitely join next time for sure.
Awesome. It's going to be a wee bit, because this was the last one for this term. And
okay.
They put me back in English 510 next term, but I'll still run them in English 510.
Okay, perfect.
Yay.
Thank you for the invite. I've missed your meetings. I've been deep in my own crisis of my thesis one, so nice break.
That's understandable. I told you my best friend did the SNHU MFA, and I know how hard these thesis terms are.
Yeah.
Don't psych me out.
It's hard, but it's great. It's worth it. You come out of it with a manuscript.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Cool.
Thank you so much for coming.
Thanks. Bye.
Thank you for inviting me.
Yeah, thanks. Bye, everybody.
Bye.
Bye.